The boy lived in a small, crumbling apartment on the edge of a busy city. The walls were thin, and the windows let in little light. Most days, the place smelled of old wood and damp air. Despite all this, he felt at home in his own small way. He shared the tiny space with his younger sister, who was always cheerful even when their world was hard. Their mother had passed away years ago, and their father had left long before they could remember. The boy took care of his sister, making sure she ate and stayed safe while he tried to keep the apartment together. Life was hard, but he had one thing that brought him hope: his music. He had found an old violin in a trash pile one rainy day. It was scratched and broken, missing strings, but to him, it was a treasure. He cleaned it as best as he could and strung it with makeshift strings that he had bought from a street vendor. Every evening after he made sure his sister was asleep and the apartment was quiet, he would sit by the small window and play. His music was simple at first, raw and rough, but it was full of heart. It carried the sadness, hope, and dreams that he had kept hidden from the world. When he played, he felt free, as if the small, dim apartment could vanish and the whole world would listen only to him. On this particular morning, the boy woke up to the usual sounds of the city: cars honking, street vendors shouting, and the soft chatter of people walking to work. He rubbed his eyes, stretched, and looked at his sister, who was already awake and smiling. "Good morning," she whispered, brushing her hair. He smiled back, careful not to wake the neighbors who lived in the apartments close by. After a quick breakfast of bread and tea, he grabbed his violin and left the apartment. He liked to walk to the small park near the center of the city. It was not a fancy place. The grass was patchy, and the benches were old and worn, but it was a safe spot where he could play for the people passing by. Today, like many other days, he planned to play for anyone who would stop and listen, hoping to earn a few coins to buy food for his sister. The boy sat on a wooden bench, opened his violin case, and tuned the strings as best as he could. His fingers moved carefully, remembering each note and sound. Soon the soft music started to flow through the air. At first only a few pigeons, and a stray dog seemed to notice, but slowly, passers-by began to pause. Some smiled politely, while others dropped coins into his small battered case. The boy didn't care about the money much. It was the sound that mattered, the feeling that he could touch someone's heart with his music. From across the park, a black luxury car drove slowly, catching the boy's attention. The windows were tinted and he could see a tall man stepping out, dressed in a suit that shone like it had never been worn before. People in the park began to watch as the man walked toward the boy with a mixture of curiosity and impatience. The boy noticed the way the man looked at him, a mixture of disbelief and amusement. He did not recognize the man, but the air seemed to change when he approached, almost as if the sounds of the city faded into the background. The man stopped, a few feet away, folded his arms, and leaned slightly forward. "What is this?" he said in a voice that carried both authority and a hint of mockery. "You sit here with that old thing and pretend it can make a sound?" The boy froze for a moment, feeling the weight of the man's words, but he did not stop playing. The music continued, soft at first, then stronger, trying to reach into the heart of the stranger. The millionaire smirked, clearly entertained by the boy's determination. He circled the bench, examining the violin and the boy's thin, dusty clothes. "Let me see if you are worth anything," he said, crossing his arms. "If you can play, I'll adopt you, otherwise go back to where you came from." His words were sharp, almost cruel, but they carried a strange challenge that the boy could not ignore. The boy's heart pounded in his chest. He had never been adopted before, never dreamed that someone with so much could even notice him, let alone offer such a thing. Yet there was fear in his chest too. The man's eyes were hard, filled with doubt and expectation. He looked around as if daring the boy to fail. The crowd in the park had grown. Some people were whispering, others were watching silently, waiting to see if the boy could rise to the challenge. He took a deep breath, his small hands gripping the violin tightly. He thought of his sister sleeping in the tiny apartment, dreaming of a better life. He thought of the cold nights, the empty stomachs, and the days filled with struggle. And then, he let the music speak. The first notes were trembling, unsure. But as he focused, the tune grew stronger, richer and full of emotion. Every note carried his story, his pain, his hope, and his dreams. The music seemed to float through the park, touching the hearts of those who listened. The millionaire's smirk faltered. He raised an eyebrow, surprised at the depth and skill in the boy's playing. The tune was unlike anything he had heard from someone so young and so poor. It was not just music. It was a story told without words, a melody that spoke of life's hardships and small joys. The people in the park stopped, captivated by the sound. Even the stray dog lay quietly, as if listening carefully. For the first time, the boy felt that his music had a purpose beyond just filling the silence. He felt that someone, at least one person, could see the truth behind the worn-out clothes and the small, thin hands. The millionaire took a step back, his expression changing from mockery to curiosity, and then to something that the boy could not yet name. Pride, awe, respect. When the last note lingered and faded into the gentle hum of the city, the boy lowered his violin, his chest heaving with the effort. He looked up at the millionaire, expecting criticism, a dismissive laugh, or even a sharp remark. Instead, the man stood in silence, a faint shadow of a smile on his face. He was clearly shaken, but he tried to hide it, clearing his throat and straightening his jacket. The boy did not know what would happen next. He did not dare hope. But deep down, something had shifted. The challenge had begun, and he had answered it with everything he had. He did not know if it would be enough to change his life, but he had dared to dream. And in that moment, the music had done more than fill the air. It had connected two very different lives in a way that no words could explain. The millionaire finally spoke, his voice lower now, less mocking and more thoughtful. "You have talent," he said. "More than I expected. But talent alone is not enough. Are you ready for a life that is very different from this? A life that will challenge you in ways you cannot imagine?" The boy nodded, not trusting his voice to speak. He only knew one thing. He was ready to try, ready to face whatever came next, and ready to see where his music could take him. The crowd in the park slowly dispersed, leaving the boy and the man alone. The millionaire motioned for him to follow, and together they walked toward the black car. The boy's heart raced, not from fear alone, but from excitement. He did not know what awaited him, but for the first time in a long time he felt that something extraordinary was about to happen. The old violin rested under his arm, worn and scratched, yet carrying the magic that had changed a moment, and perhaps a life. And with that music, the boy stepped into a future he had only ever dreamed of. The boy's heart was still pounding as he followed the millionaire to the sleek black car waiting at the curb. He had never been in a car like this before. The leather seats were soft and smelled of polish, and the floor was spotless. He hesitated before getting in, worried that he might touch something wrong, that something small he did might ruin the chance he had. The millionaire gave him a curt nod, and the boy slid in carefully, clutching his violin case. The ride was quiet at first. The city streets whizzed past, but inside the car, it felt like a different world. The boy stared out the window, taking in the tall buildings, the busy people, and the bright advertisements that seemed to scream at him from every corner. He had seen the city before, but never like this. Never from a car like this, never with someone like the millionaire watching him. His mind raced with questions. Where would they go? What would happen next? Could he really leave everything he knew behind? After a few minutes, the car stopped in front of a tall, modern building with large glass windows that reflected the sunlight. The boy felt a mix of awe and fear. He had never been inside a place like this. The doors opened and the millionaire gestured for him to follow. As they walked inside, the boy noticed the polished floors, the grand staircase, and the smell of fresh flowers. People in expensive suits and elegant dresses passed by, glancing at him curiously. He felt out of place, but he tried to keep his head high. They entered a large room where a few people were gathered. The millionaire spoke briefly, introducing the boy as someone with exceptional musical talent. The people clapped politely, but their eyes were full of doubt. The boy felt their scrutiny, and for a moment his courage wavered. What if he wasn't good enough? What if they laughed at him like the boy's old classmates sometimes did? He tightened his grip on his violin, taking a deep breath, and reminded himself of the music that had carried him this far. The millionaire turned to him with a serious expression. "You have talent, but to be part of this world you must prove yourself. Not just with music, but with heart, with patience, and with strength. Are you ready to try?" The boy nodded silently. He did not fully understand what the man meant, but he knew one thing. He wanted to seize this chance, no matter how difficult it might be. The next days were unlike anything the boy had ever experienced. He was taken to a large, bright room filled with musical instruments of every kind. There were grand pianos, harps, violins, and drums, all shining and perfectly maintained. For the boy, it was like stepping into a dream. The millionaire told him he would have lessons with some of the best musicians in the city. At first, the boy was overwhelmed. The instruments were strange, the music was complex, and the teachers were demanding. He felt nervous, unsure if he belonged here. But whenever he picked up his violin and played, the familiar feeling returned. The music spoke for him when words could not. One evening, after a long day of practice, the boy sat alone in his small room in the mansion. The room was simple compared to the rest of the house, but it had a window that let in the moonlight and a quiet corner for him to play. He opened his violin case and took out the old instrument that had been with him through everything. Even here, surrounded by wealth, this old violin felt like home. He played softly, the notes floating through the room. Each sound reminded him of his sister, the small apartment, and the streets of his old neighborhood. Tears filled his eyes, but they were not just for sadness. They were for the journey he had begun, for the hope that maybe, just maybe, life could be different. The millionaire walked in quietly, listening without interruption. When the boy finished, he looked at him with a mix of surprise and respect. "You play with your heart," he said. "Most people with all the training in the world cannot make music feel like that. It is rare." The boy felt a small smile tug at his lips. For the first time, someone in this new world acknowledged not just his talent, but the emotion behind it. He realized that this was what mattered most, not the wealth, not the grandeur, but the music that came from within. As the days turned into weeks, the boy's life began to change in ways he could not have imagined. He had teachers who pushed him harder than anyone ever had. He learned to read music, to play complex pieces, and to understand the theory behind the sounds. He made mistakes, often large ones, but he learned to accept them and try again. Each small success gave him confidence, and he started to believe that maybe he could succeed in this world, not just survive. He also had to adjust to the new rules and routines of the mansion. He learned to wake early, dress neatly, and attend meals with the staff and occasional guests. At first, these things felt strange and uncomfortable. He missed the freedom of the streets, the simple joy of walking through his old neighborhood, and even the small, broken apartment that had been home. But slowly, he began to see that this new life offered him chances he could never have imagined before. The millionaire, who had seemed so stern and distant, was watching closely, guiding him in ways that were not always clear. Sometimes the man would ask questions that seemed unrelated to music, about patience, kindness, or honesty. The boy realized that the challenge was not just about playing well. It was about becoming someone who could handle the world he was entering. One afternoon, the boy was asked to perform for a small gathering in the mansion. The guests were all wealthy, influential people who were used to excellence. The boy felt nervous, almost frozen with fear, but as he lifted his violin and began to play, something inside him shifted. He remembered all the moments when music had been his refuge, all the evenings when he had played to make himself and his sister feel better. The music flowed naturally, and for a few minutes the boy and his violin became one. The room was silent except for the sound of his playing. When the last note faded, there was a quiet pause, then polite, amazed applause. The boy realized that he had touched these people's hearts just as he had touched the hearts of strangers in the park. Despite these successes, the boy faced challenges that were not only musical. Some of the other children and staff in the mansion were skeptical of him. They whispered about the poor boy who had come from nothing, questioning whether he truly belonged. The boy overheard these remarks and felt hurt, but he reminded himself of why he was here. He had a purpose, a dream, and a talent that could not be taken away. Every time he felt doubt creeping in, he played his violin, letting the music remind him of his worth. In his private moments, the boy also thought of his sister. He wrote letters, told stories of the new life he was experiencing, and promised her that he would find ways to help her too. He wanted her to see that hard work, courage, and passion could change life in ways that nothing else could. He did not yet know how he would bring her into this world, but he kept the thought alive as a guiding light in his heart. The millionaire watched the boy's progress closely. He had expected talent, but he did not expect the boy's determination, humility, and resilience. Each day he saw more of the boy's potential, not just as a musician, but as a person. He began to involve him in decisions about performances, charity events, and even some business matters related to cultural projects. The boy learned quickly, adapting to new situations and absorbing knowledge like a sponge. He discovered that life was not only about music, but also about understanding people, relationships, and the responsibilities that came with opportunity. One evening, the millionaire called the boy into his study. The room was filled with books, sheet music, and photographs of concerts and events. The man sat behind a large desk and gestured for the boy to sit. "You have come far in a short time," he said. "But there is still more to learn, more to understand. Talent alone will not make you successful. You need patience, courage, and the ability to face the world even when it seems unfair. Can you do that?" The boy nodded, his eyes shining. He had already faced hardships he never thought he would survive, and he knew he could face more. "Yes," he said simply. "I will try my best." The millionaire studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "Good. Tomorrow you will perform at a larger gathering. People will judge you not just for your music, but for who you are. Remember, the music comes from your heart. That is what makes it real." The boy felt a mixture of excitement and fear. He knew this was another step, another challenge, but he also felt ready. He had come this far, and he would continue to move forward. That night, the boy sat by his window, violin in hand. The moonlight cast a soft glow across the room. He played quietly, imagining his sister listening, imagining the streets and parks of his old life. Each note carried his memories, his hopes, and his courage. He knew that tomorrow would be another test, another chance to prove himself. But for now, he let the music fill the room, letting it remind him of who he was and what he could become. The journey had only just begun, but he felt ready for whatever lay ahead. The morning of the performance arrived, and the boy could hardly sleep the night before. His mind was full of thoughts, excitement, and fear. He kept picturing the audience, imagining their faces, and wondering if he could truly impress them. He picked up his violin and played quietly in his room, letting the familiar notes calm his nerves. The music flowed gently, reminding him of all he had learned, all he had overcome, and all the people who had believed in him. It reminded him that this was more than just a performance. It was a chance to show the world who he truly was. When he arrived at the grand hall, he was awestruck. The room was vast, with tall ceilings, crystal chandeliers, and polished floors that reflected the light. People filled the seats dressed in their finest clothes, talking in quiet, polite whispers. Many of them had attended countless performances before, but this was the first time they would see someone like him. The boy felt a flutter in his chest, a mixture of fear and determination. He clutched his violin tightly, knowing that the first notes would speak louder than any words he could say. The millionaire stood near the front, watching him carefully. His expression was calm, but the boy sensed a hint of anticipation. He took a deep breath and walked to the center of the stage. The audience fell silent, and the boy felt all eyes on him. He closed his eyes for a moment, remembering the streets, the small apartment, and the nights when he had played alone. He remembered the joy and comfort music had brought him, and how it had always given him strength. Opening his eyes, he raised his violin and began to play. At first, the music was soft and cautious, as if the boy were testing the waters. But gradually it grew in confidence and depth. Each note carried a story of struggle and hope, of longing and courage. The audience listened intently, some leaning forward, some closing their eyes to feel the sound more fully. The boy's fingers moved with precision, but more importantly with heart. Every melody spoke not just of skill, but of a life that had faced hardships and had refused to give up. A few people in the audience whispered to each other, surprised at the depth of emotion coming from someone so young and from such humble beginnings. The boy did not notice them. He was completely absorbed in the music. He imagined his sister listening somewhere, imagining a better life, and it gave him strength. He poured everything he had into the performance, letting the violin tell his story in ways words never could. The music seemed to fill the room, wrapping around each listener, touching their hearts and evoking emotions they had long forgotten. Halfway through, the boy noticed the millionaire. His stern expression had softened. There was a light in his eyes, a sign that he was not just listening but feeling the music deeply. This realization gave the boy even more courage. He had always hoped that someone would understand him. But this was different. This man, who had everything, who had seemed cold and distant, was moved by the music. The thought that he could touch someone's heart so profoundly made the boy play with even more passion and intensity. As the performance continued, the tune changed. It became more complex, blending sorrow and joy, loss and hope. The audience was captivated. Some had tears in their eyes, others had smiles that were small but sincere. It was as if the music had broken down walls, allowing people to feel emotions they had not experienced in a long time. The boy felt a strange connection with everyone in the room. For the first time, he understood the true power of music, the ability to unite, to heal and to inspire. When the final note lingered and faded, the room was silent for a moment, stunned by the beauty and depth of the performance. Then slowly the applause began. It started quietly, then grew louder and louder, filling the hall with clapping and cheering. The boy felt a rush of emotion, a mixture of relief, joy, and pride. He lowered his violin and looked out at the audience. Faces that had seemed distant and critical were now filled with admiration and respect. He had done it. He had shared his heart through music, and it had reached them. The millionaire approached him quietly, standing close enough for only the boy to hear. "You have done more than impress anyone here," he said. "You have moved people in ways that are rare. Talent alone does not create this. This is heart, courage, and truth. You have shown me that you are extraordinary, and that is why I am proud to offer you not just guidance but my support in all you wish to achieve." The boy felt a wave of gratitude and disbelief. This was more than he had ever imagined. His dream was coming true, but it was also more than a dream. It was a reality shaped by his effort, persistence, and passion. In the days that followed, the boy's life began to change in ways he could hardly believe. Invitations came for him to perform in more events, for people to hear his music and for others to learn about his story. The mansion, once intimidating, became a place of opportunity and growth. His teachers were proud and encouraged him, helping him refine his skills and expand his musical abilities. Yet the boy remained humble. He never forgot where he came from, the struggles he had faced, or the people who had helped him along the way. He also began to explore the world beyond the mansion. The millionaire arranged for him to attend concerts, meet other musicians, and even visit schools and communities where music could inspire children like him. The boy discovered that music could be a bridge, connecting people from different backgrounds and experiences. He felt a responsibility to share his talent and help others find the same hope that music had given him. Every note he played was not just for himself, but for everyone who had ever struggled, for those who had ever felt overlooked, and for those who had ever dreamed of something better. Despite the praise and attention, the boy remained grounded. He remembered his sister, and every decision he made was influenced by the thought of helping her and giving her a better life. He began to write letters and tell her about his experiences, making sure she understood that his journey was not just about success, but about love, family, and courage. He wanted her to see that no matter how difficult life could be, perseverance and passion could open doors that once seemed impossible. The millionaire continued to watch and guide the boy. He had expected talent, but he had not expected the boy's determination, resilience, and humility. Each day he saw more of the boy's potential, not only as a musician but as a person who could inspire others. The boy began to understand that life was not just about performing or achieving recognition, but about learning, growing, and using one's abilities to make a positive difference. He realized that his music had power, but so did his actions, his decisions, and his willingness to help others. One evening, after another successful performance, the boy sat quietly in his room, holding his violin and reflecting on the journey so far. He thought about the streets he had left behind, the struggles he had faced, and the moments of doubt that had once seemed overwhelming. He thought about the people who had encouraged him, the strangers who had listened to him, and the millionaire who had given him a chance. Each thought was like a note in a song, building a melody of gratitude, hope, and determination. He understood that this was only the beginning of a long journey, but he was ready to face it with courage and heart. The boy's story began to spread beyond the mansion. People talked about the young musician from humble beginnings who had captivated a wealthy audience and touched hearts with his music. Articles, invitations, and letters came from all over, and the boy faced each new opportunity with the same mix of excitement and humility. He learned that fame and recognition were not as important as the ability to move people, to connect with them, and to inspire them to believe in themselves. As the days passed, the boy continued to grow not only as a musician but as a person. He learned to navigate the complexities of his new world, to balance expectation with creativity, and to remain true to himself amidst admiration and praise. He discovered that courage was not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act despite it. He understood that success was not measured by applause or recognition alone, but by the difference one could make in the lives of others. And he knew that his music, his heart, and his persistence would continue to guide him, no matter what challenges lay ahead. The performance had changed everything, not only in the eyes of the audience, but in the boy's own understanding of himself. He realized that talent was a gift, but it was effort, determination, and love that gave it meaning. He felt a deep sense of purpose and responsibility. And as he held his violin, looking at the stars through his window, he felt a quiet joy. The joy of knowing that he had taken the first step in a journey that could transform not only his life, but the lives of many others. The music had opened a door, and he was ready to walk through it one note at a time. The days after the big performance were filled with new experiences for the boy. Invitations came from everywhere. People wanted him to perform, meet others, and share his music. Every event felt like stepping into a different world. Some places were grand theaters, others were private gatherings in beautiful homes. The boy had never imagined anything like this, but he felt a deep sense of purpose. His music had opened doors, and he wanted to walk through them with courage and humility. The millionaire watched him carefully, guiding him in subtle ways. He did not intervene often, but his presence was reassuring. He offered advice when needed and reminded the boy that talent alone was not enough. "Remember," he said one evening, "your music is powerful, but how you live your life will define who you truly are. Always stay true to yourself and never forget where you came from." The boy nodded, knowing these words carried more weight than any lesson he had learned from teachers or practice sessions. The boy's days were busy. Mornings began with practice, refining his skills and exploring new techniques. He spent hours with teachers who pushed him beyond what he thought was possible. At first, the exercises were exhausting. He struggled, made mistakes, and felt frustrated. But slowly, the hard work paid off. He noticed improvement in every note, every melody, and every performance. He realized that dedication was as important as talent, and that persistence could turn dreams into reality. Afternoons were filled with meetings, social events, and lessons in etiquette and confidence. The boy learned how to speak in public, how to introduce himself, and how to engage with people from different backgrounds. These lessons were sometimes awkward, but he embraced them with patience and curiosity. He wanted to grow not just as a musician, but as a person capable of handling the opportunities and responsibilities now presented to him. Evenings were often for performances or personal practice. The boy continued to play his old violin alongside new instruments, feeling the connection to his past. Every note he played carried memories of the streets, the apartment, and the nights spent comforting his sister. Music was no longer just a hobby or a comfort. It was a bridge between his past and his present, a way to honor where he came from while moving toward where he wanted to be. One afternoon, the millionaire approached him with a serious expression. "I want to introduce you to someone," he said. The boy followed, curious and slightly nervous. They arrived at a small, elegant room where a young woman waited. She was a skilled musician and teacher, known for mentoring talented young performers. "She will help you refine your skills and prepare for even greater opportunities," the millionaire explained. The boy felt a mix of excitement and apprehension. He had learned a lot already, but he knew this would push him further than ever before. The lessons with the new mentor were intense. She challenged him to play pieces that were beyond his current skill, to express emotion in new ways and to understand the stories behind the music. The boy worked tirelessly, often staying late into the night. Sometimes he felt exhausted, sometimes frustrated, but he never gave up. With every practice session, his confidence grew. He began to feel not just capable, but inspired. He realized that true mastery came not from avoiding difficulty, but from embracing it and learning from every challenge. During this time, the boy also spent more time thinking about his sister. He missed her terribly and often wrote letters describing his experiences, his progress, and the wonders he was seeing. He promised her that one day she would be part of this new life too. His thoughts of her motivated him to keep going, to work harder, and to never forget why he had started this journey. The idea of helping her and sharing his success made every struggle meaningful. The millionaire began to involve the boy in important events. He attended charity concerts, helped organize performances, and even met influential people who could support his career. The boy learned quickly, absorbing knowledge about planning, leadership, and the responsibilities that came with recognition. He understood that being a musician was more than playing notes. It was about connecting with people, inspiring them, and using his gift to make a positive impact. One evening, the boy was asked to perform at a large charity event. The hall was filled with important guests, journalists, and music enthusiasts. The boy felt nervous, but he remembered everything he had learned. He focused on the music, letting it speak for him. As he played, the audience was captivated. Each note carried his journey, his struggles, and his hopes. They listened in silence, moved by the depth of feeling in his performance. When the last note faded, there was a moment of quiet followed by applause that seemed to shake the room. The boy felt a sense of pride and accomplishment, but remained humble, knowing that this was just another step in his journey. After the event, the millionaire spoke to him quietly. "You have done well," he said. "But remember, your journey is just beginning. Talent and success can open doors, but it is your character, humility, and willingness to help others that will define your true legacy." The boy nodded, understanding the wisdom in these words. He felt grateful for the guidance he had received and determined to use his opportunities responsibly. The boy also began to help others. He visited local schools, orphanages, and community centers, teaching children who had little access to music. He shared his knowledge, his passion, and his hope. He wanted others to experience the same joy and inspiration that music had given him. Through these efforts, he learned that success was not only about personal achievement, but also about lifting others and making a difference in their lives. As weeks turned into months, the boy's life became more structured, more filled with purpose, and more connected to the world beyond his own experiences. He grew stronger, not only in his musical abilities but also in his understanding of responsibility, empathy, and the importance of staying grounded. He continued to perform, learn, and inspire, always remembering the small apartment, the streets, and his sister who had been the reason he started playing in the first place. The millionaire began to see the boy as more than just a talented musician. He admired his resilience, his kindness, and his dedication. He realized that offering guidance, support, and opportunities to someone with such potential could create a life that was extraordinary in more ways than wealth alone could provide. The bond between them grew stronger, built on mutual respect, trust, and shared experiences. The millionaire became a mentor, a guide, and eventually a father figure, helping the boy navigate a world that had once seemed impossible to enter. One quiet evening, the boy sat by his window, violin in hand, reflecting on his journey. He thought of the streets, the small apartment, the struggles, and the nights spent playing music alone. He thought of the challenges he had overcome, the lessons he had learned, and the people who had believed in him. He realized that his life had transformed not just because of opportunity, but because he had worked tirelessly, believed in himself, and never lost sight of his dreams. The boy felt a deep sense of gratitude. He knew that his journey was far from over, but he also understood that he had grown in ways he had never imagined. He had learned the power of perseverance, the importance of humility, and the value of using his talents to help others. He had experienced transformation not just in his circumstances but in himself. His music had been the key, but it was his heart, courage, and determination that had unlocked the doors to a new life. As he played softly that evening, the boy felt a sense of peace. The notes carried his past, his present, and the hope of the future. He knew that more challenges awaited him, but he also knew that he was ready. He had been tested, had grown, and had shown that talent combined with heart could change not only his life but also the lives of those around him. And in that moment, with the music filling the room, he felt that he had truly begun to embrace the life he had been given, ready to face whatever came next with courage, humility, and the joy of sharing his gift with the world. The boy had come far from the small, crumbling apartment where he had spent his childhood. Now he was a young man with talent recognized far beyond the streets he had once walked. His life had been transformed by music, courage, and the belief of one man who had dared to give him a chance. Yet despite all the success and recognition, he remained humble and grounded, never forgetting the hardships that had shaped him. One morning, he received an invitation to perform at a grand international event. The audience would be composed of influential people, famous musicians, and passionate music lovers from around the world. The boy felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. He knew this performance would test not just his skill, but the heart and soul he put into his music. It was an opportunity to show the world the story that his violin had been telling all these years. As he prepared for the performance, he practiced diligently. Each note, each melody was polished with care. But more importantly, he played with emotion, with the memories of his past, the love for his sister, and the struggles he had overcome. Music was no longer just a skill. It was a language through which he spoke to the world, conveying stories of resilience, hope, and the power of dreams. He remembered the streets, the old violin, and the first time someone had believed in him, and these memories filled his playing with authenticity and soul. The day of the performance arrived. The grand hall was filled with people, all waiting to hear the young musician who had become a symbol of determination and talent. The boy stepped onto the stage, feeling the weight of expectation but also the lightness of purpose. He held his violin, the old instrument that had been with him through so much, and he knew that tonight it would carry not just notes, but a journey. As he began to play, the hall fell silent. Every note seemed to weave a story, capturing the attention and hearts of everyone present. The music flowed naturally, rising and falling like the waves of life itself. The boy's fingers moved gracefully, each motion filled with intent and feeling. He did not think about applause or recognition. He thought only of the music and the message it carried. It was a story of perseverance, of struggle transformed into beauty, and of the human spirit's ability to rise above challenges. The audience was captivated. Some had tears in their eyes, others smiled softly, moved by the sincerity and depth of the performance. Critics who had once doubted him were now silent, unable to look away. The young musician had transcended technique. He had reached the hearts of those listening. Each person in the hall felt connected to the boy's journey, inspired by the courage and dedication that had brought him to this moment. After the final note lingered and faded into silence, there was a pause, a breath of awe. Then the hall erupted in applause, a wave of appreciation and admiration that seemed endless. The boy lowered his violin, his heart full, and looked out at the faces in the crowd. He saw smiles, tears, and expressions of genuine awe. In that moment, he realized that he had not only performed, but had shared a part of himself, and it had reached others in ways that words could never describe. Backstage, the millionaire approached him, his eyes shining with pride. "You have done more than succeed," he said. "You have inspired, moved, and changed the hearts of everyone who heard you. Talent brought you here, but your heart and dedication made this possible. Remember that this is only the beginning." The boy nodded, understanding that while this achievement was monumental, it was also a step towards something greater, a responsibility to use his gift wisely. The boy continued to grow in prominence, performing in cities around the world. With each performance, he carried the story of his past and the lessons he had learned. He became an example for children and young musicians, showing that talent combined with perseverance, humility, and heart could overcome even the most difficult circumstances. But he never let fame or recognition change who he was. He remembered the small apartment, his sister, and the first audience that had believed in him, keeping those memories alive in every note he played. Beyond performing, he began to give back. He started programs for children from underprivileged backgrounds, providing them access to music education, instruments, and mentorship. He wanted to create opportunities for those who had little, just as he had once needed a chance. Through these efforts, he discovered that success was not just personal achievement, but the ability to uplift others. His story and his music became a beacon of hope, showing that dreams could become reality when nurtured with patience, effort, and love. The millionaire remained a guiding presence in his life. He offered wisdom, encouragement, and sometimes gentle challenges that pushed the boy further. But he also gave space, allowing the young musician to make choices, learn from mistakes, and grow independently. Their bond was no longer just about opportunity. It was a relationship built on mutual respect, trust, and shared experiences. The millionaire had given him a chance, but the boy had transformed it into a life of meaning, purpose, and inspiration. Years passed, and the boy became a respected figure in the world of music. His performances were not only technically brilliant but deeply moving. Audiences felt the stories behind the music, the struggles, hopes, and dreams that had shaped him. He continued to mentor young musicians, perform in charity events, and dedicate time to causes that supported education and the arts. His life had become a bridge, connecting the world of privilege and opportunity with those who had been overlooked or underestimated. One day, he returned to the small neighborhood where he had grown up. He walked the familiar streets feeling a mix of nostalgia and pride. The apartment building was still there, a little worn but standing strong. He thought of his sister, who had grown alongside him, sharing dreams and hopes. He played for a small gathering of children in the park, the same way he had years ago, and saw the joy and wonder in their eyes. It reminded him of why he had started, of the power of music to bring hope and light into lives that needed it most. He realized that the journey had not been easy. There had been moments of doubt, exhaustion, and fear, but each challenge had taught him something valuable: the importance of perseverance, the strength of humility, and the beauty of giving. He had discovered that music was not only a skill but a language of the heart, capable of connecting people across barriers of wealth, culture, and circumstance. And he had learned that true success was measured not by recognition or riches, but by the lives touched and inspired along the way. In the final moments of reflection, the young musician sat with his violin, thinking of all that had happened. He remembered the first challenge, the millionaire sneer, and the promise that had seemed impossible. He thought of the small apartment, the nights of quiet practice, and the dreams that had kept him going. And he knew that he had come full circle, not because the world had changed for him, but because he had changed, grown, and used every opportunity with heart and courage. His story became known far and wide, not just as a tale of talent, but as a journey of determination, resilience, and kindness. The boy who had once played for coins in a park had become a man whose music inspired countless people. And through it all, he remained true to himself, humble, compassionate, and committed to helping others realize their own potential. Every note he played, every child he mentored, and every performance he gave carried the essence of his journey. The violin that had been his companion through hardship now symbolized hope, transformation, and the incredible power of one person's determination to change not only their own life but the lives of many others. And as he played, he smiled quietly, knowing that his music would continue to speak, inspire, and change the world, one note at a time.